The widow had reached the dining-room threshold before anyone at Lynden Hall understood that the evening's first accusation would not be spoken by her.
She stood beneath the carved arch with both hands clasped around a small grain sack, her bonnet damp from the October mist, and her face pale with the strain of having asked for entry more than once.
Beside her, on the stone just beyond the carpet, rested a blackened wooden half-bushel measure. No servant moved, no guest looked directly at her. Sir Rufus Bellrose did both.
He looked at her and then at Mr. Cray, the elderly butler who had allowed her through the service passage. "Remove her," he said.
His voice was low enough to preserve the appearance of civility, and sharp enough to make every servant hear the threat beneath it.
Lucilla Bellrose's hand stopped over the loaf at the center of the table.
It was a smaller loaf than Lynden Hall would once have served at dinner, though she had placed it on a narrow trencher, so the difference would not be immediately obvious.
Her mother's horn-handled bread knife lay beside it. A small nick near the tip caught the candlelight whenever Lucilla moved the blade.
She had used that knife for years to cut thin, precise slices, always beginning with her own. At Lynden, scarcity was permitted only when it looked intentional.
Across from her, Lady Sophronia Caverton lowered her eyes with practiced restraint. Pearls rested at her throat.
She had spent most of dinner speaking of county subscriptions, moral discipline, and the gratitude expected from those who received relief.
Now she watched the blackened measure rather than the woman beside it. The other guest watched Lucilla. Mr.
Swithin Northcott had been introduced as a gentleman connected with her father's business affairs.
He wore a severe, dark coat without ornament, and had spoken so little that his silence had begun to feel deliberate. There was nothing warm in his expression, but there was attention in it.
Lucilla had noticed that he missed very little. "Mrs. Baines came before the soup was served, sir," Mr. Cray said.
His hands remained at his sides, though one thumb pressed hard against the seam of his livery.
She was asked to wait. "And you decided my dining room was the proper place for tenant complaints?" Sir Rufus asked. "No, sir. She said the matter could not wait until morning, Mrs."
Baines's fingers tightened around the sack. She was perhaps 50, though hunger and worry had deepened the lines around her mouth. Her husband had died the previous winter.
Since then, she had kept a cottage, a strip of kitchen ground, and 2 grandchildren on less money than Sir Rufus spent on wine for a single dinner. "What matter?" Lucilla asked.
Her father turned his head. "Lucilla," the warning was familiar. It meant that he had decided the subject must end before she had enough information to object.
Baines looked toward him, then at the floor. "The wheat, miss." Her voice was quiet. "The relief portion from Lynden Granary. It was written as half a bushel. I took most of it to be ground with Mrs.
Hale's grain. What came back scarcely made 3 small loaves. I thought perhaps there had been a mistake." Sir Rufus leaned back in his chair. "There has been no mistake."
The grain was measured under proper supervision. Mrs. Baines's face changed. It was not defiance. It was the humiliation of being told that hunger had made her either foolish or dishonest.
Lucilla knew that expression. She had seen it on servants who apologized for being ill, and on tenants who thanked her father for promises he had not kept.
She had worn a quieter version of it herself. "May I see the sack?" Lucilla asked. Mrs. Baines stepped forward 1 pace. The sack was smaller than the numbered estate sacks used for transport.
It bore a wheat mark in faded black, but no visible serial number. A little grain remained inside. "It was filled from that measure?" Lucilla asked, glancing at the blackened vessel. "Yes, mister."
Voss struck it level with a board. "Did he fill the measure once?" "Once, miss. He said that was the half-bushel." Sir Rufus's fingers closed around the stem of his wineglass.
"You have heard enough." Lucilla looked down at the loaf. The knife lay ready beside her hand. She could still cut the bread. She could ask Mrs. Baines to return in the morning.
She could preserve dinner, the guests, her father's temper, and the fiction that Lynden Hall's kindness had been measured honestly. That was what she had always done.
She had made too little look elegant and too much cruelty look private. "The woman has received charity," Mr. Northcott said. His tone was controlled, almost weary.
Those who receive it cannot define the measure merely because the result disappoints them. Silence fell so completely that the faint hiss of 1 candle sounded loud.
Lady Sophronia's mouth softened with approval. Mrs. Baines lowered her eyes. Mr. Cray looked as though he had been struck by a cold wind. Lucilla turned toward the guest.
Do you believe disappointment creates less flour? She asked. His gaze settled on her.
I believe poor milling, waste, or inaccurate recollection may do so. And hunger? Hunger can make any shortage feel deliberate. Something inside Lucilla went still, not calm. Decision.
She placed the horn-handled knife beside her plate. The nick in its blade flashed once, then vanished into shadow. Hunger doesn't make a woman insolent, sir.
It only makes the doors she has already knocked upon impossible to ignore. Sir Rufus's chair scraped against the floor. You will apologize. Lucilla rose.
Her knees felt unsteady beneath the table, but her voice did not. For what? For speaking to my guest as though you had the right to rebuke him. Then I apologize, she said, turning toward Mrs.
Baines, for allowing you to be kept in the service passage until desperation forced you into this room. Lady Sophronia drew a slow breath. Mr. Northcott did not look offended.
That unsettled Lucilla more than anger would have done. His attention sharpened as if her answer had altered the value of something he had already been calculating. Sir Rufus looked toward Mr. Cray.
You are dismissed from this house. The butler's face drained of color. No, Mr. Northcott said. The word was not loud. It stopped the room more effectively than a command shouted across it.
Sir Rufus stared at him. I beg your pardon? Dismiss him for admitting a woman with a complaint about supplied grain, and every servant on the estate will understand that silence is safer than...
Accuracy. This is my household. Then you should be interested in whether its measure is honest. Sir Rufus's expression tightened. You overstep. Perhaps. Mr. Northcott rose.
But the grain bears a mark connected to a supply under my observation. That makes the complaint relevant. Lucilla noticed the phrasing. Not ownership. Not yet.
Still, her father reacted as though a door had closed behind him. Lady Sophronia's gaze shifted again to the blackened measure. Mr. Northcott saw that. Lucilla saw him see it.
He crossed the room and stopped beside Mrs. Baines. He did not touch the sack. Was anything demanded from you in exchange for the grain? He asked. No money, sir. Anything else, Mrs.?
Baines hesitated. Only that we remember who had been generous. Lady Sophronia spoke before anyone else could. Surely gratitude is not an unreasonable expectation. Lucilla looked at her.
Not when gratitude follows honesty, Sir Rufus said. Enough. Mr. Northcott turned to Mrs. Baines. You will not be turned out tonight without an answer, Mr.
Cray, place the sack and measure where no one can alter them. Do not open the measure. Mr. Cray looked toward Sir Rufus, then back to the guest.
Yes, sir, and send a man for paper. Sir Rufus's composure frayed. There is no need to turn one complaint into an inquiry. Then an inquiry will end quickly, Mr.
Northcott's eyes moved to the small sack. Is this one of the original transport sacks? No, sir, Mrs. Baines said. They filled this for me at the granary. Does it bear a number? Lucilla asked.
Mrs. Baines turned the sack in her hands. There was only the faded wheat mark. No cereal. Mr. Northcott nodded once, as if the distinction mattered. Good.
Then no one will confuse it with the estate consignment. He looked at Lucilla.
You noticed that before I asked, the original sacks are larger. You have seen them only from a distance in the yard. But you remembered. Sir Rufus's voice sharpened.
My daughter remembers household details, because she has little else with which to occupy herself. Lucilla felt the familiar cut of the remark. Mr. Northcott did not look away from her.
Household details are often where larger dishonesty believes itself invisible. The sentence reached deeper than praise would have done. Lucilla did not know what to make of him.
A moment earlier, he had spoken as though charity canceled the right to question. Now he was the only man in the room preventing her father from burying the complaint. Mr.
Cray stepped forward to take the measure. When he lifted it, the base struck the stone with a dull, uneven sound. Lady Sophronia's fingers tightened around her reticule. Mr.
Northcott's expression changed. He bent, took the measure by the rim, and turned it slightly. Something inside the base gave a muted wooden shift. Sir Rufus went very still.
Lucilla looked from the vessel to her father, then to Lady Sophronia. No one seemed surprised enough. Mr. Northcott lowered the measure carefully. No one touches this again tonight, he said.
Sir Rufus's faces had lost color. Lucilla, you have insulted a man whose displeasure could ruin Lynden Hall. Mr. Northcott's gaze settled upon her. There was no anger in it now.
Only a severe, unsettling interest. Your daughter, he said, has not yet been told whose displeasure she has earned.
For one suspended moment, Lucilla heard nothing but the faint hiss of candle wicks and the small scrape of Sir Rufus's ring against the stem of his glass.
The dining room had not changed, yet every object in it seemed suddenly arranged around the stranger who stood beside the blackened measure. Lady Sophronia's composure held, but only just. Mr.
Cray remained near the threshold with Mrs. Baines, uncertain whether he was still dismissed, still employed, or expected to pretend neither had happened.
Sir Rufus rose too quickly and caught the edge of the table with one hand. "Lucilla," he said, and the anger in her name had become something closer to alarm. "You will show proper respect to his."
Grace, Swithin Northcott, 9th Duke of Greyhaven. The words seemed to move through the room before Lucilla fully understood them. She had heard of the Duke of Greyhaven. Everyone in Kent had.
He was the man who had returned from wartime supply service with a reputation for remembering every missing crate, every false tally, and every gentleman who believed rank would protect dishonesty.
Contractors had lost fortunes after he examined their books. Estate stewards had resigned rather than answer his questions.
Men who laughed at gossip did not laugh at the prospect of Greyhaven's attention. Lucilla looked at him.
The severe dark coat, the unadorned cuffs, the stillness that had seemed merely private now took on another meaning.
He had not needed to announce power because the people who mattered had already known it. Her father had known. Lady Sophronia had known.
They had watched her rebuke a duke and had chosen silence until the humiliation could be used against her. Lucilla curtsied because custom required it. She did not lower her eyes.
"Your Grace." Sir Rufus released a breath. "Now you understand what you have done." "I understand who he is," Lucilla said. "That does not alter what he said." Lady Sophronia's brows lifted, Mr.
Cray looked at the floor. Swithin's expression did not soften, but his attention sharpened. "No," he said, "it does not." Sir Rufus stared at him.
Your Grace, my daughter is unused to matters of consequence. She appears unusually attentive to them. Swithin turned toward Mrs. Baines.
The widow still held the small recipient sack against her gown. Its faded wheat mark was visible near the seam. "Mrs. Baines, I spoke before examining what you brought."
"I treated your complaint as though receiving relief had deprived you of judgment. I was wrong." Mrs. Baines blinked. Confusion crossed her face before relief dared follow it.
"Thank you, Your Grace. Do not thank me yet." His voice remained controlled.
An apology without correction is merely another way for a powerful man to close a conversation. Lucilla felt the sentence land inside her with unexpected force.
Sir Rufus said there is no need to turn one poor remark into a public matter. The remark was mine, Swithin replied. The grain is another matter entirely. He looked toward Mr. Cray.
"Bring paper, ink, sealing wax, and a scale suitable for a small quantity." "Yes, Your Grace." Mr. Cray moved at once. Sir Rufus stepped around the table. "This can be handled in the morning."
"A hungry household cannot dine on the promise of morning. Lynden will provide whatever is necessary." "Lynden has already provided what was said to be necessary." Swithin's gaze shifted to the sack.
"The question is whether the proper amount reached the person for whom it was intended." Lady Sophronia folded her hands. Surely county confidence should be considered. A single complaint, however,
"Regrettable, could be misunderstood if treated with unnecessary severity. Confidence built on concealment deserves misunderstanding." A faint color rose beneath her powder.
"I meant discretion. So do I. Discretion is not silence." Mr. Cray returned with a small writing tray, scales, paper, and sealing wax. A young footman followed with an empty wooden box.
Swithin motioned for the tray to be placed on the sideboard. "Mrs. Baines, may Mr. Fenner examine the grain?" She looked uncertain. "Who is Mr. Fenner, Your Grace?" "My solicitor."
"He is waiting in the library." Sir Rufus's jaw tightened. "You brought a solicitor to dinner? I brought a man capable of recording figures accurately."
"Tonight that appears useful." Lucilla nearly looked away to hide the movement at the corner of her mouth. Swithin saw it.
His own expression did not change, though something warmer briefly entered his eyes. "Mr.
Fenner arrived within minutes, a lean man with silver beginning at his temples and no visible curiosity about the tension in the room. Swithin explained only what had been established.
The sack was a recipient sack, not one of the original transport sacks. It carried no serial number. Mrs.
Baines stated that it had been filled once from the blackened measure and struck level before most of its contents were taken to be milled. Mr.
Fenner weighed the remaining grain, recorded the result, and asked Mrs. Baines to repeat how many loaves the flour had produced. He wrote her answer exactly.
Then, with her permission, he removed a small grain sample, placed it in folded paper, sealed it with wax, and marked it with her name, the date, and Lynden Hall. The remainder belongs to Mrs.
Baines, Swithin said. Return the sack to her. Mr. Fenner did so. No object vanished into another man's custody merely because it had become inconvenient. Lucilla noticed that too. This mark, Mr.
Fenner said, indicating the faded wheat sheaf on the sack, resembles Greyhaven's relief stamp, but the sack bears no number. It was filled at Lynden Granary, Mrs. Baines said.
From a larger bin, Swithin nodded. Then it must not be confused with the original consignment. He turned to Sir Rufus.
How many Greyhaven sacks arrived? Several. That is not a number. My steward keeps the account. I know the number. The room went still again.
60 full wheat sacks left Greyhaven Park on the 10th of October. Each bore a serial number from R201 through R260.
3 wagons carried them here. Lucilla looked at her father. Sir Rufus's face had become carefully blank. You did not mention 60 sacks, she said.
Relief accounts are not your concern. Household flour was reduced after the delivery. His gaze struck her.
You will not involve yourself in estate matters, Swithin spoke before Lucilla could answer. She is already involved. She knows what reached the kitchens. Sir Rufus turned on him.
This is my estate, and the grain remains my property until it is properly distributed. Swithin's tone did not rise. At first light, every numbered sack still at Lynden will be counted.
My steward will attend. Mr. Fenner will record. Mr. Cray will witness. No servant or tenant will be questioned alone, dismissed, dispossessed, or denied relief for speaking. Lady Sophronia said,
Your Grace, such precautions imply guilt. They imply that facts should survive the night. He looked at Lucilla. Miss Bellrose, will you attend the Count? Sir Rufus answered for her.
She will not. Swithin did not look at him. I asked Miss Bellrose. Lucilla felt the weight of the choice.
Her father had spent years making obedience sound like the only respectable answer available to her. The Duke had offered her a place in the inquiry, but not as decoration and not as reward.
I will attend, she said, if Mrs. Baines' complaint is entered as testimony and not described as ingratitude. Mr. Fenner's pen paused. Swithin inclined his head. It will be entered exactly as
She gave it. Sir Rufus said, You encourage her to speak beyond her understanding. I am asking what she knows. The distinction moved through Lucilla like the opening of a locked window.
Swithin turned to Mr. Cray. Send a mounted man to Greyhaven Park with a written order. Emergency flour is to leave by the West Lodge tonight and go directly to Mereford Baker. Mrs.
Baines's household and Mrs. Hale's are to receive enough for immediate bread. Yes, Your Grace. The delivery will be entered. No public line at Lynden's gate.
No condition of gratitude. Lady Sophronia's expression tightened. You make generosity sound like an account. When food is measured, generosity should survive arithmetic. Mr.
Fenner prepared the order. Swithin signed and sealed it, then handed it to Mr. Cray. The butler accepted it with both hands. You remain employed, Swithin said. Mr. Cray glanced towards Sir Rufus.
Your Grace, I serve Sir Rufus. Then serve him by ensuring his household is not protected from truth. Sir Rufus sat down slowly.
It was the first time Lucilla had ever seen him yield without disguising the retreat as choice. Swithin moved toward the blackened half-bushel. This measure is to remain untouched, Mr.
Fenner brought the empty wooden box nearer. Shall I secure it now? Yes, but first. Swithin took the vessel by the rim and turned it upside down.
Something shifted inside the base with a muted wooden knock. Lady Sophronia's breath caught. Sir Rufus said nothing. Lucilla watched both of them. Neither appeared surprised enough.
Swithin lowered the measure into the box without attempting to open it. Mr. Fenner closed the lid, tied it, sealed the cord, and marked every person present.
It stays in your locked traveling chest until morning, Swithin said. No one opens it before a proper comparison is arranged. Lucilla looked at him.
You believe there is something inside. I believe something moved, and if it explains the shortage, then the measure will speak more accurately than reputation. He turned toward her.
Tomorrow, Miss Bellrose, we count 60 sacks. The blackened vessel sat sealed between them, its hidden weight now more dangerous than any insult spoken at dinner.
At 7 the next morning, before the mist had lifted from the lower fields,
Lucilla stood inside Lynden Granary and looked at 20 empty places where grain should have been.
The absence was more eloquent than any accusation. Along the western wall, numbered wheat sacks stood in orderly rows beneath narrow windows. Dust silvered the floorboards.
The air smelled of dry husks, rope, and cold stone. Yet beyond R240 there was only bare wall and the clean rectangular marks left by weight recently removed.
Swithin stood beside Mr. Ashby, the Greyhaven steward, while Mr. Fenner opened the dispatch book on a wooden table.
Sir Rufus remained near the door, as though the granary belonged to him more completely if he refused to enter its center. Mr. Cray waited with ink and paper.
3 Greyhaven wagon drivers stood opposite him, caps held respectfully in their hands. Mr. Fenner's locked traveling chest rested beneath the table. Inside it lay the sealed wooden box containing the blackened measure. Lucilla had slept little. She had spent the dark hours remembering the Duke's apology to Mrs.
Baines and the way her father had known his identity while allowing her to speak in ignorance. One act had made Swithin harder to distrust. The other had made Sir Rufus easier to understand.
Begin with the dispatch, Swithin said. Mr. Ashby opened the estate book to the entry dated the 10th of October. 60 full wheat sacks left Greyhaven Park, Your Grace.
R201 through R260. 3 wagons. 20 sacks to each. Were they weighed before departure, Mr. Fenner asked. Yes, 2 granary men witnessed the loading.
Their marks are here. Sir Rufus folded his arms. A book kept 8 miles away proves only what Greyhaven intended to send. Swithin looked at him. Then Lynden's count will show what arrived, Mr.
Cray began reading the visible numbers aloud. The first 8 sacks were not in the main rows. They had been carried to the loft after being opened for the earliest allotments.
Their mouths were loosely tied rather than stitched, and each retained some grain. R201. R202.
The sequence continued without interruption through R208. Mr.
Fenner recorded their opened condition and the amount remaining in each without pretending the morning count could reconstruct every portion already distributed.
Who ordered these opened? Swithin asked. Sir Rufus answered. My steward supervised the first allotments. Using which measure? Lucilla asked. Her father's gaze moved toward her.
The customary granary measure, the blackened one? I do not inspect every vessel used by servants, but you know which one was customary. Sir Rufus's jaw tightened.
It has served Lynden for years. Swithin said nothing. That silence held more pressure than a challenge would have done. Mr. Cray continued the count below.
R209 through R224 formed the first unopened row. R225 through R240 stood behind it. Their seams remained intact.
Their cords were undisturbed. Mr. Ashby examined each wheat stamp and serial mark before Mr. Fenner entered it. When the final number was called, the granary fell silent.
8 open sacks accounted for, Mr. Fenner said. 32 unopened sacks accounted for, 20 sacks absent. Sir Rufus stepped forward.
They may have been moved to another store. Which store? Swithin asked.
I would need to consult my steward. He was too ill to attend last night. He remains unwell. Illness does not move 20 sacks. Sir Rufus's color rose.
You speak as though theft has already been established. No. Swithin glanced at the empty wall.
I speak as though 20 physical objects cannot become an opinion merely because their location is inconvenient. Lucilla looked toward the drivers.
Did all 3 wagons enter Lynden Yard? The first driver nodded. Yes, miss.
We came through the main gate together. Were any sacks lost on the road? No, miss. Did a cord break? No. The second driver gave the same answer.
The third was younger and plainly uncomfortable beneath Sir Rufus's attention. Swithin addressed him without moving closer.
What happened after you entered the yard? The first 2 wagons were taken beside the granary. Your Grace.
Mine waited near the stable wall. Why? Sir Rufus spoke with a local carter. Sir Rufus's voice cut across him. Many workmen were in the yard. The driver swallowed.
Yes, sir. Swithin kept his gaze on the man. Continue. I was told to hand over the reins. The local man was Matthew Rook.
He sometimes carts for Lynden and Caverton properties. Lucilla saw her father's hand close around the head of his walking stick. Who gave the order? Mr. Fenner asked.
The driver looked at Sir Rufus, then down. Sir Rufus did. That is false, Sir Rufus said.
You may have misunderstood an instruction from the steward. I didn't, sir. The contraction sounded almost apologetic.
You said the third load was wanted elsewhere, and Mr. Rook knew the road. Swithin's expression became very still. Did you see where he took it? He drove around the east side of the house. I didn't see beyond the orchard wall. Mr.
Cray spoke quietly. There is a service gate there. Sir Rufus turned on him. You were not asked. No, sir. The butler lowered his eyes.
But the gate exists. Lucilla looked again at the empty spaces. The missing sacks had not vanished between Greyhaven and Lynden. They had reached her father's yard and been removed after arrival.
Whatever explanation Sir Rufus intended to offer would have to account for a named carter, an east gate, and 20 numbered sacks. Swithin turned to Mr. Fenner.
Record the driver's statement exactly. He may read it or have it read to him before placing his mark. Sir Rufus gave a short laugh.
You accept a servant's memory over mine? I accept that he has given a specific account and you have not. Swithin moved toward the traveling chest. Now the measure. Miss
Fenner unlocked the chest and lifted out the sealed wooden box. He showed the wax and cord to every witness before cutting them. The blackened half-bushel emerged unchanged.
No one had opened its base. Mr. Ashby brought a plain household vessel from the granary shelf. It was not a legal standard, and Swithin stated so before the comparison began.
Grain from one opened sack was poured into the black measure and struck level. The same grain was then transferred to the household vessel.
The difference was visible even without exact certification. The blackened measure held markedly less. Lucilla heard Mr. Cray draw a careful breath.
Sir Rufus said, "Household vessels vary, which is why this proves suspicion, not quantity," Swithin replied. He crouched beside the black measure without dismantling it.
When he pressed against the underside, something within resisted and shifted faintly. Mr. Fenner leaned closer. A fitted base, perhaps. Perhaps, Swithin said.
Do not open it until a proper market standard half-bushel is obtained. Lucilla looked at him.
Why wait when something is clearly inside? Because if we alter it now, your father may claim we created the defect after removing it from Lynden custody. Sir Rufus's mouth tightened.
At last, some sense. Swithin rose. Do not mistake caution for agreement, Mr.
Fenner wrapped the vessel in stout cloth, labeled it with the date, location, and names of those present, then sealed it inside the wooden box again. The box returned to his locked traveling chest.
From that moment, no servant at Lynden and no member of Sir Rufus's household retained access to it. Lucilla turned toward the sacks.
The kitchen flour was reduced 3 days ago. Sir Rufus's gaze hardened. That has no bearing on this count. It was reduced after the relief grain arrived.
So was the servant's bread and small beer. Swithin looked toward her. Who gave the orders? My father gave them through the steward. I adjusted the table in kitchen use. Why? Because that is
what I am expected to do when Lynden has less than it wishes anyone to see. Sir Rufus said, household economy is not evidence of theft. No, Swithin replied.
But relief grain should have eased pressure on household stores.
Instead, Lynden reduced its own provisions immediately after receiving 60 sacks. Coincidence, perhaps. Swithin's gaze moved from the empty wall to the open sacks in the loft.
But coincidence will be entered with everything else. Lucilla felt the old shame rise. She had always believed competence meant preventing shortage from becoming visible.
Now the very skill that had protected Lynden's reputation had also made disappearance easier to hide. You think someone relied upon the household appearing unchanged, she said.
Swithin looked at her, not with pity, but with recognition. I think someone believed no one would count what a capable woman had been taught to conceal. Mr.
Cray appeared at the granary door with a folded note from Mereford. It had been sent by Mr. Cale, the parish baker, after hearing that Greyhaven was examining the allotments.
The baker did not claim 8 full sacks had yielded too little flour. He reported something more precise.
Several households recorded as having received a half-bushel had brought him quantities that milled like substantially less. Each household named the same blackened measure.
Lucilla read the final line twice. The missing 20 sacks were one part of the scheme. The grain that remained had been divided with a vessel designed to make scarcity look sufficient.
Swithin looked toward the east wall of the granary, where the numbers ended at R240. We now have 2 questions, he said.
Where did the third wagon go? And how long has Lynden been calling a short measure full? By the afternoon of the 14th, Lucilla had learned that a false measure did more than steal grain.
It taught the hungry to distrust their own memory.
She stood inside Mirrorford Bakehouse, with Mrs. Norbury on one side of her and the rector's wife on the other, while Mr.
Cale cleared flour from a long wooden table. Heat from the ovens pressed against the cold lingering in their cloaks.
A market standard half bushel, borrowed under written receipt from the keeper at Mirrorford Market, sat near the center of the room.
It was clean, plainly made, and heavy enough that no one could mistake it for a kitchen bowl. Mr. Cale had not been asked to prove what 8 full sacks should yield.
That question no longer mattered. What mattered was what each household had been told it had received. A widow named Mrs. Pell had brought her allotment before taking it to the mill.
The small recipient sack bore the same faded wheat mark as Mrs. Baines's, but no serial number. Mr. Cale loosened the cord and poured the grain into the standard vessel. It did not reach the rim.
He leveled it carefully, then added grain from his own store until the measure was full. The difference filled a shallow wooden bowl. About 1/6 short, he said.
Lucilla looked at the missing quantity. It was not dramatic enough to shock anyone who had never gone hungry. That was what made it useful. Taken from one household, it might seem a mistake.
Taken from 6, 10, or 20, it became an invisible store. Was your sack struck level when they filled it? Lucilla asked. Mrs. Pell nodded. Mr. Voss ran a board across the top. I saw grain fall.
Back into the bin. And that blackened measure was used? Yes, miss. Did anyone ask you for money? No. Did anyone ask for anything else? The widow looked toward the rector's wife before.
Answering. Only that I remember where the grain came from. What did that mean? Lucilla asked gently. Mrs. Pell's fingers tightened around the edge of her shawl.
My eldest works 2 days a week at Lynden. Mr. Voss said there might be extra labor expected once harvest repairs began.
And that people who complained could not expect to be considered first another time. Mrs. Norbury's face remained calm, but Lucilla knew the stillness in her godmother's hands.
It meant anger had been placed under discipline. Your name will not be read before subscribers, Lucilla said. Nor will the names of your children. Mrs. Pell looked at her with open doubt.
Sir Rufus will know I spoke. He may guess. He will not receive your statement from me. The woman lowered her eyes, then nodded.
Lucilla recorded only the amount, the measure used, the number of dependents, and the condition attached. She did not write Mrs. Pell's name on the same sheet, Mrs.
Norbury kept a separate list folded inside her reticule. The system was slower, but it did not turn poverty into public display. From the bakehouse they went to 2 more households.
At the first, an elderly couple had already milled their portion. Mr. Cale compared the flour weight with what a true half-bushel of similar wheat usually produced.
The result matched the same shortfall. At the second, Mrs. Baines showed Lucilla the 3 small loaves she had managed from her flour. One had already been divided between her grandchildren.
The remaining 2 were thinner at the center where she had stretched the dough. I thought perhaps I'd done something wrong, she said. You did not, Lucilla replied. The measure was wrong, Mrs.
Baines looked relieved, then ashamed of the relief.
I should have known. Why? Because it felt too little. Feeling hunger does not make you an expert in another man's dishonesty. The words came more sharply than Lucilla intended, but Mrs.
Baines's shoulders eased. That was when Lucilla understood the deeper cruelty. The false measure did not merely remove grain.
It forced each household to wonder whether waste, poor skill, or ingratitude was to blame. By the 16th, the pattern was secure enough to present.
Lucilla returned to the bakehouse with the private needs list, Mrs. Norbury's sealed names, and the quantity record. Swithin arrived shortly after noon with Mr. Fenner and Mr. Ashby.
He removed his gloves near the door, but did not reach for the papers on the table. "What have you established?" he asked.
3 households measured directly or by controlled comparison, Lucilla said, each recorded as receiving half a bushel, each short by approximately 1/6.
The same blackened measure was used. And the others? Consistent loaf yield. Not proof by itself, but consistent with the same shortage. Mr. Fenner glanced at the sheets.
May I? Lucilla kept one hand on them. Under conditions. Swithin's gaze sharpened, but he did not object.
Name them. No recipient will be summoned before subscribers to describe hunger for the improvement of someone else's reputation. The household names remain with Mrs.
Norbury except where delivery requires them. The public account will show quantities, not private circumstances. Mr. Fenner looked toward Swithin.
That may complicate later verification. Then verification must work harder, Lucilla said. The poor have already done enough for our convenience. Swithin considered her for a moment. Agreed. Bread should be collected on ordinary baking days, she continued, not from Linton's gate. No family should have to stand beneath my father's windows to receive what was promised. Agreed. The market standard measure remains with Mr. Cale under written responsibility.
It returns to the market keeper when the inquiry is complete. Agreed. Only then did Lucilla release the papers. Swithin read them carefully. He did not praise her compassion.
He studied the pattern, the conditions attached to relief, and the separation between public quantities and private names. This is sound, he said. The word affected her more than she expected.
Her father had always praised her when a room looked graceful, or guests failed to notice what was missing. No one had ever called her method sound. Mr. Ashby began drafting a new distribution order.
Greyhaven grain would move directly to the baker. Portions would be measured against the borrowed standard. Recipients would collect bread during ordinary hours.
No crest would be displayed over the door. No speech of gratitude would be required. You have removed nearly every visible sign that the Duke is involved, Swithin said. Lucilla met his eyes.
Does that trouble you? Deeply. I had commissioned a banner. She looked at him, uncertain. The faintest movement at the corner of his mouth revealed the joke.
A laugh escaped her before she could stop it. Mrs. Norbury lowered her gaze to hide a smile. A very large banner, I hope, Lucilla said, unbearably large.
It may now have to become a curtain. Then at least it will serve someone. His expression warmed for an instant. The moment passed when Mr.
Cale entered from the yard, carrying a folded scrap of paper. This came from Mrs. Hobb, miss. She wouldn't say it before the others. Lucilla opened the note.
The writing was uncertain and had been guided by another hand, Mrs.
Hobbs stated that Sir Rufus had once offered an extra portion of grain if she did not repeat what she had seen from the field lane on the morning of the 10th.
A third wagon had entered Lynden with the others. After some time it had turned east, away from the granary road.
She had recognized the local carter handling the reins, but had been afraid to name him. At the bottom, in darker ink, appeared one name, Matthew Rook. Lucilla handed the note to Swithin.
His face changed as he read. The third driver said the same man took the wagon. Then Mrs. Hobb confirms the direction, Lucilla said. Mr. Ashby moved toward the door.
I can send for Rook at once. Not yet, Swithin replied. Why not? Mr. Fenner asked.
Because if Sir Rufus offered grain for silence, Rook may be more afraid than dishonest. Swithin looked toward Lucilla. Where does he live? She searched her memory.
Matthew Rook had carted timber for Lynden the previous spring. She had once approved a small kitchen allowance for his household after his sister became widowed.
In a cottage east of the Orchard Road, she said. Caverton property, I think. The room went still.
Lady Sophronia's premature knowledge of the missing 20 sacks had already made suspicion dangerous. Now the eastward wagon and Matthew's cottage both led toward Caverton land. Swithin folded Mrs.
Hobbs' note along its existing crease. Then we do not begin by threatening the man whose roof may depend upon silence. Lucilla looked at him.
What will you do? Find out what truth costs him before asking him to pay it. Outside, the bakehouse bell marked the next collection hour.
Inside, the borrowed standard stood full and honest on the table. Lucilla looked at the shallow bowl holding the 1/6 that had been missing from Mrs. Pell's portion.
The quantity was small enough to overlook. 20 households at a time. It could become a crime no one saw until the wagon itself began to move east.
By the 17th of October, the new distribution at Mireford Bakehouse had already revealed a problem no ledger had recorded.
The grain could now be measured honestly, but the people receiving it still had to surrender half a day to stand in line.
Lucilla arrived shortly after dawn and found elderly tenants waiting beside laborers who would lose wages if they remained past the first oven bell. Mrs.
Baines stood near the door with her shawl drawn tightly around her shoulders.
A woman from the far edge of the parish had brought a sleeping infant's blanket folded beneath her arm, though there was no child with her.
She had come before sunrise because she could not leave her sister's household twice in 1 week. Mr. Ashby had arranged the recipients by surname, exactly as the temporary list had been copied.
The result looked orderly and served almost no one. Mrs. Baines should go first, Lucilla said. Mr. Ashby glanced at the page in his hand. Her name begins with B.
She is already near the front. Near is not the same as first. She walks slowly, and her cottage is farther than Mrs.
Allen's. The list prevents dispute. The list creates a different one. She moved down the line, asking only what time each person had to return home or work.
Within 10 minutes, she had separated those losing wages, those caring for an infirm relative, and those unable to stand for long. Mr. Ashby followed with increasing disapproval. Miss Bellrose, the
arrangement has already been written. Then it can be written again. You cannot alter order every time someone presents a private difficulty. Every household has a private difficulty.
That is why alphabetical order is not neutral. He looked toward Swithin, who had entered with Mr. Fenner, and paused near the flower table.
Your Grace, this will become impossible to administer. Swithin watched Mrs. Baines receive bread, sign no pledge, offer no public thanks, and leave before the lane filled with carts.
Then he looked at Lucilla. How long did the change take? Less than a quarter hour. How many complaints? None. Mr. Ashby cleared his throat.
That does not make it a system. Lucilla turned toward him. It becomes a system when the rule is clear.
Those who lose wages, those who cannot remain standing, and those caring for someone unable to be left alone go first. Everyone else follows by arrival. Swithin held out his hand for the list. Mr.
Ashby gave it to him. Write that at the top, the Duke said. Keep the surnames beneath it for record only. Mr. Ashby's face tightened. Yes, Your Grace. Lucilla expected triumph and felt none.
She had not defeated the steward. She had simply made a room move more honestly. Mr.
Cale struck the borrowed market standard measure level and recorded each allotment before grain went to the mill or flour went to the ovens. No crest hung over the door.
No speech interrupted the work. The only public sign of authority was Swithin himself, standing back far enough that recipients could pass without curtsying to him. Lucilla noticed that too.
When the morning rush eased, he joined her beside the cooling shelves. Mr. Ashby will forgive you, he said. Will he? No. But he will obey the revised rule, which is nearly as useful. You make
obedience sound like consolation. In estate management, it often is. She looked toward the doorway where a laborer carried 2 loaves under his coat to protect them from the wind.
You trust systems more than people. Swithin did not deny it. During the war, I inspected supply depots that were immaculate on paper. Every boot was entered. Every ration was signed for.
Men still went without both. Then the records were false. Yes. And your answer was to trust order more? He looked at her.
My answer was to make order harder to corrupt. That is not quite the same thing. No. His tone changed, becoming more reflective than defensive. It is not. Lucilla waited.
He seemed unused to anyone allowing a silence to remain after correcting him. What lesson would you have taken? He asked.
That neatness can conceal dishonesty as easily as disorder can. You object to neatness only when people confuse it with virtue. The faintest amusement touched his expression.
You are determined to leave me very few principles. Only the lazy ones. He looked at her for a long moment. The bakehouse noise moved around them. Wooden peels scraped the oven floor.
Flour drifted through a shaft of pale light. Nothing in his face suggested flirtation, yet Lucilla felt the awareness between them sharpen. He noticed how she thought.
That was more dangerous than admiration. Admiration might fade when challenged. A tension of this kind deepened because of it.
Lady Sophronia arrived before noon with Sir Rufus and 2 county subscribers. Her carriage stopped directly outside the bakehouse, forcing those still waiting to move closer to the wall.
She entered wearing a blue pelisse trimmed in dark fur, elegant enough to turn relief into a scene arranged for her arrival.
Your Grace, she said, I had not expected the distribution to proceed without the principal subscribers present. The bread did not know it was required to wait, Swithin replied.
Sir Rufus' gaze found Lucilla. You have been here every morning? Where else should I be? At Lynden, attending to your proper duties. These were Lynden's duties until they became
Inconvenient. Lady Sophronia smiled with measured patience. Miss Bellrose's compassion is admirable. Yet charity must preserve order, gratitude, and restraint.
Otherwise, expectation grows faster than relief can satisfy it. Lucilla looked at the standard measure near Mr. Cale's table. A full measure is not an expectation.
It is merely honest. One subscriber looked away to hide a reaction. Lady Sophronia's smile thinned. No one disputes honesty.
But if 20 sacks were delayed, the entire county effort should not be condemned before the facts are known. The words seemed ordinary until silence gathered around them. Lucilla turned slowly.
Mr. Fenner stopped writing. Mr. Ashby looked toward Swithin. Sir Rufus's face lost its practiced irritation and became abruptly still. Swithin's voice was quiet.
20? Lady Sophronia blinked once. I beg your pardon? You said 20 sacks. A figure of speech. An unusually precise one. She lifted her chin.
Sir Rufus mentioned there had been some confusion. Swithin looked at him. Did you tell Lady Sophronia 20 sacks were missing? No. The answer came too quickly, Mr.
Ashby spoke before being asked. I did not, Your Grace. Lady Sophronia's gaze moved between them.
Then perhaps I heard it from another subscriber. The number has not been given to subscribers, Mr. Fenner said. Sir Rufus's irritation returned, but now it looked forced. This is absurd.
People speculate. People speculate in round numbers, Swithin replied. You named the exact missing quantity. Lady Sophronia turned toward Lucilla as though a lesser target might restore control.
Surely you do not intend to make vulgar suspicion out of an innocent remark. I intend to remember it. You have become very bold under ducal attention. The insult was soft enough to sound like
concern. Lucilla felt the old instinct to retreat before society turned usefulness into impropriety. Swithin stepped closer, not to shield her body, but to place his authority beside her judgment.
Miss Bellrose's attention has altered this distribution because it was sound, he said. Not because it pleased me. Lady Sophronia's eyes cooled.
One of the subscribers asked to see the recipient names. No, Swithin said. The public account will show quantities.
Private households remain private. Then how are we to judge whether the need is genuine? By the measure, the baker's record, and the witness statements.
Hunger does not become more credible because a widow is made to describe it before gentlemen. Lucilla looked at him. He had listened, not merely to the method, but to the reason beneath it.
Swithin took the revised distribution sheet from Mr. Ashby and held it out to Lucilla. Explain the order you established. The subscribers turned toward her. So did Sir Rufus.
Lucilla felt the weight of being placed before them, but it was not the humiliating exposure Lady Sophronia had intended.
Swithin had not called her charitable, tender-hearted, or exceptional for a woman. He had called the method sound.
Lucilla explained the priority rule, the separation of public quantities from private names, and the requirement that every portion be struck level in the borrowed standard. Questions followed.
She answered without apology. Lady Sophronia remained silent until the subscribers moved toward the ovens. Then Swithin stopped beside her. You knew the number 20, he said.
Before anyone outside the inquiry had reason to know it. Lady Sophronia looked past him toward the bread being carried through the door. Be careful, Your Grace.
Suspicion can damage a county more quickly than hunger. Swithin's expression hardened.
Only when the county values its appearance more than its people. Lucilla watched Lady Sophronia leave with Sir Rufus. Neither spoke until they reached the carriage. They did not need to.
The exact number had already spoken for them. By the 21st of October, the third wagon's route had narrowed to 1 lane, 1 gate, and 1 frightened man.
Swithin stood beneath the eastern wall of Lynden Hall with Lucilla, Mr. Fenner, Mr. Ashby, and the Greyhaven driver, who had surrendered the reins 11 days earlier.
The service gate opened onto an orchard track before dividing near a low stone bridge. The northern branch returned toward Mereford. The eastern branch crossed into Caverton land.
Fallen leaves had erased any useful wheel marks, but the gatekeeper's memory had not altered.
He remembered Matthew Rook driving the loaded wagon out shortly after noon, with no Lynden servant accompanying him. Did he carry a written order? Mr. Fenner asked. The gatekeeper shook his head.
Not that I saw, sir. Did anyone stop him? No. Sir Rufus had spoken to him in the yard. The Greyhaven driver confirmed the same sequence. He had brought R241 through R2.
160 to Lynden, waited beside the stable wall, then handed the reins to Matthew after Sir Rufus said the load was wanted elsewhere. This time Mr.
Fenner read the statement back sentence by sentence before the man signed it. Sir Rufus could no longer claim that an uncertain servant had been hurried into agreement.
Swithin looked along the eastern road. How far is Rookie's cottage? Less than 2 miles, Lucilla said, near the old lime field.
The cottage belongs to Caverton, though he takes carting work wherever it is offered. Mr. Ashby glanced at her. How do you know that? His sister was widowed last spring.
I approved kitchen provisions for the household while he repaired the cottage roof. Swithin's gaze rested on her. Your father called household detail an occupation without consequence. My father.
rarely notices consequences until they become public. They traveled to the cottage in 2 carriages, leaving the Greyhaven driver with Mr. Fenner at Lynden to complete his statement.
Matthew Rook was splitting kindling behind the house when they arrived. He was a broad-shouldered man of perhaps 35, dressed in a worn coat with cart grease darkening one cuff.
His wife appeared at the doorway, and behind her stood a thin woman in widow's black. Matthew's face changed when he recognized Lucilla. It changed again when he saw Swithin.
"Your Grace," he bowed awkwardly. "We're not here to take you away," Swithin said. "There is no charge before us."
"We are asking about work you performed on the 10th. Matthew looked toward the cottage door. "I've said all I know. You haven't said where you took the wagon," Mr. Ashby replied.
Swithin raised one hand, stopping him. "Did Sir Rufus instruct you to take control of the 3rd Greyhaven wagon?" Matthew stared at the ground.
"Yes. Did you drive it through Linden's east gate?" "Yes. Were 20 numbered wheat sacks still aboard?" "They were." "Where did you take them?" Matthew's jaw tightened. "I can't say."
Ashby stepped forward. "You understand that refusing a direct question from His Grace may end every estate contract you hold." "No," Swithin said. The single word cut cleanly through the threat. "Mr."
Ashby stopped. Swithin looked at Matthew. "Any carting work already done for Greyhaven will be paid. Any truthful answer will not bar you from future Greyhaven employment, Mr."
"Ashby will record that before you speak further." Matthew's eyes lifted. "That doesn't keep this roof over them." Lucilla followed his glance. His wife had not moved from the doorway.
The widowed sister held one hand against the frame as though the cottage itself required guarding. "The lease is Caverton's," Lucilla said.
"Yes, miss. And the cart? Mine, but the shed ground isn't. Who reminded you of that?" Matthew said nothing. He did not need to. Fear had already named the power involved.
Swithin's expression hardened, though his voice remained measured. "I cannot promise Caverton will not retaliate before I have arranged another roof."
"I will not purchase your statement with a promise I cannot yet keep." Matthew looked at him with startled suspicion.
Powerful men, Lucilla knew, usually lied most smoothly when honesty would cost them control. Swithin did not. "I can promise this," he continued. "You will not be detained.
Your wife and sister will not be questioned without consent. The labourers who may have unloaded the wagon will not be punished merely for obeying instructions they believed lawful.
If you decide to speak, send word through Mr. Fenner or Miss Bellrose. Until then, no one from Greyhaven will trouble this house." Matthew's shoulders loosened by a fraction. "I drove east," he said.
"That's all I can give you today." "Then that is all we take today," Swithin replied. As they returned to the carriage, Lucilla looked back at the 3 figures standing in the cottage doorway.
"He knows the destination." "Yes," Swithin said.
"And he believes naming it will make 3 people homeless. Will you find them somewhere else, before I ask again?" Even if his answer does not help you, Swithin turned toward her.
Protection offered only after useful testimony is payment, not protection. The distinction settled between them with a quiet force.
Lucilla had watched men call obedience loyalty, silence gratitude, and dependence duty. Swithin, for all his faith in order, seemed determined not to rename coercion merely because it served his inquiry.
By the afternoon of the 23rd, Mireford's flour reserve had fallen to less than 1 day's baking. Mr. Cale sent a written count to Lynden.
The emergency supply from Greyhaven had prevented immediate hunger, but demand had exceeded what the first cart could sustain. 32 unopened sacks remained inside Lynden Granary.
Lucilla carried Mr. Cale's note into her father's study, where Sir Rufus sat with Swithin and Mr. Fenner. Lady Sophronia was present near the fire, examining a newly printed notice.
"The baker will have nothing for tomorrow morning," Lucilla said. "Release 10 sacks." Sir Rufus did not look up.
"No, they are relief grain. They are evidence under inquiry. 20 are missing."
"These 32 are not. And until the account is settled, none will leave Lynden." Lucilla turned to Swithin.
"You said the grain remained yours until properly distributed." "It does. Then distribute it." A muscle tightened in his jaw. "I will retain 2 unopened sacks for comparison."
"The rest can be released once numbers, witnesses, and condition are recorded." "When? Tomorrow morning?"
Cale needs flour before dawn. A hurried release could allow your father to claim the count was compromised. And a perfect record will not feed anyone tonight." Sir Rufus rose.
"This discussion is over." He summoned Mr. Cray and the Lynden steward.
Before all of them, he ordered the granary door locked. A thick cord was drawn through the iron latch and knotted.
Sir Rufus pressed the Bellrose signet into dark red wax over the knot. The crest hardened beneath his ring. "No one enters without my authority," he said. Swithin's face had gone cold.
"You do not have authority to prevent Greyhaven grain from serving its stated purpose. Then challenge me formally."
"Until you do, that seal stands on my door." Lady Sophronia folded the printed notice. "Perhaps the county should hear tomorrow that relief has been preserved from reckless interference."
I have arranged a subscription meeting at the Mereford Assembly Room. Confidence must be restored before gossip does further harm. Lucilla looked at her.
"You arranged it before the inquiry was complete. Someone must protect the work from scandal. Someone has been protecting it from truth." Lady Sophronia's expression cooled, Mr.
Cray entered again with a message brought on foot from Mrs. Baines's cottage. Mr. Cale had no flour left for morning bread. Mrs.
Baines had given her final portion to her sister's children, and had eaten nothing since the previous afternoon. Lucilla read the note once. She did not argue again.
She crossed the yard to the granary as evening settled over Lynden. The cord stretched taut across the latch. The Bellrose crest lay whole in the wax. Behind it stood 32 sacks of grain.
Beyond it, a woman was hungry. Lucilla placed 2 fingers against the cold iron beside the seal, careful not to touch the wax. By morning she understood. Obedience would no longer mean waiting.
At first light on the 24th of October, Lucilla entered her father's breakfast room, carrying Mr. Cale's latest note, and found Sir Rufus already dressed for the subscription meeting.
Lady Sophronia's printed notice lay beside his coffee. "Release 10 sacks," Lucilla said. "The baker has no flour for the morning ovens." Sir Rufus did not lift his eyes. "No."
Baines has eaten nothing since yesterday. Then the parish may wait until His Grace completes his inquiry. The grain was sent so they wouldn't have to wait. He set down his cup.
"You have mistaken involvement for authority, and you have mistaken possession for ownership." His face hardened. "You will remain at Lynden today. You will not attend Lady Sophronia's meeting."
"You will not speak to the tenants, the baker, or the Duke without my permission." Lucilla felt the familiar pressure of obedience settle over the room. It no longer felt like safety.
It felt like the cord across the granary door. "I am asking once more," she said. "Will you open it?" "No, then I will." Sir Rufus rose. "You will do nothing of the kind." Lucilla folded Mr.
Cale's note and placed it on the table. "You may tell yourself that, after I have gone." She left before he could summon anyone to stop her. The rector met her in the yard, breathless from the walk. Mr. Cray stood near the granary with the duplicate key hidden beneath his coat. Mr.
Cale had brought the borrowed market standard half-bushel from Mereford, under the same written responsibility, established 3 days earlier.
Norbury arrived moments later in her carriage and stepped down without asking whether Lucilla had reconsidered. The Bellrose cord remained taut across the latch. Sir Rufus's red wax crest was whole.
Lucilla looked at each witness in turn. "The grain is not mine," she said. "The seal is not mine. I have no legal right to open this door."
"I am doing it because the baker has nothing for this morning, and because people were promised relief, not preservation." The rector's expression was grave.
"Do you understand your father may accuse you publicly?" "Yes. And His Grace may say you compromised the inquiry. The possibility hurt more than she wished it to." "Yes, Mr.
Cray drew the duplicate key from his coat. "Miss Lucilla, once the seal is broken, it cannot be made whole again." Lucilla looked at the Bellrose crest pressed into wax.
It had represented home all her life. This morning it represented hunger protected by authority. Then let the record show who broke it and why. She took a small household knife from Mr.
Cale and cut the cord. The wax cracked against the iron latch and fell in 2 red pieces. Mr. Cray unlocked the door. Cold grain-scented air met them as the granary opened. No one hurried.
Lucilla had learned from Swithin that haste could become another form of carelessness. Mr. Cale placed the standard measure on the counting table. The rector read each serial number aloud.
R209 was opened first. The wheat inside was dry, clean, and full to the stitched seam. Mr. Cale filled the proper half-bushel, struck it level, and recorded the quantity. Mr.
Cray repeated the number. Mrs. Norbury witnessed the entry. Mr. Cale then poured a small quantity from R209 into folded paper.
The rector watched as Lucilla sealed it with wax and marked it with the date, sack number, and names of those present. A grain sample, she said, making the description exact.
The procedure continued through R218. Every sack was full. Every number was entered. 10 sacks were placed on Mr. Cale's cart for the bakehouse.
R219 through R240 remained untouched in their rows. Lucilla walked the length of them once before closing the granary. 22 unopened sacks.
No one could honestly claim she had destroyed the remaining evidence. The broken Bellrose, wax, and severed cord were wrapped and attached to the written record.
By 8 o'clock, the first 10 sacks were moving toward Mereford. By noon, the ovens were working. By 2, Sir Rufus had turned bread into scandal. Lady Sophronia's subscription meeting filled the
Mereford Assembly Room with landowners, clergy, subscribers, tradesmen, and enough curious neighbors to ensure that anything said there would reach half the county before supper.
Lucilla entered beside Mrs. Norbury. Conversation thinned. Sir Rufus stood near the front platform, one hand resting on the back of a chair as though the room belonged to him.
Lady Sophronia wore pale gray and an expression of wounded responsibility. "There she is," Sir Rufus said before Lucilla had reached the center.
"The person who broke a lawful seal, removed property under inquiry, and placed a ducal account at risk." Heads turned. Lucilla stopped. Lady Sophronia lifted one gloved hand.
Must be compassionate. Miss Bellrose acted under strong feeling. Yet compassion becomes dangerous when it mistakes itself for authority. A murmur moved through the room.
Lucilla saw one subscriber who had praised her distribution method look away. "I broke the seal," she said. Her father's mouth tightened with satisfaction.
"You admit it, yes, and removed 10 sacks, yes, without permission, yes." Lady Sophronia looked toward the audience.
There can be no reliable relief if private emotion overrules order whenever a woman believes herself morally superior to those responsible. Lucilla felt heat rise beneath her collar.
The baker had no flour. Mrs. Baines had not eaten.
I called witnesses, recorded every number, used the market standard, kept a sealed grain sample, and left 22 sacks untouched. You had no authority, Sir Rufus repeated.
Neither did you have authority to divert 20 sacks. The room changed. Lady Sophronia's composure sharpened. That accusation has not been proved. Then the inquiry should continue.
It should not require people to remain hungry while it does. The doors opened behind the final row. Swithin entered with Mr. Fenner and Mr. Ashby.
Relief crossed Lucilla so swiftly that she almost mistook it for safety. He came toward the center, his gaze moving from her to Sir Rufus, then to Lady Sophronia.
"What has happened?" Sir Rufus answered first. "My daughter broke the granary seal and removed 10 Greyhaven sacks." Swithin looked at Lucilla.
"Is that true?" "Yes. You should have waited." The words were quiet. They landed harder than Sir Rufus's public anger. Lucilla had expected questions.
She had expected him to notice who stood beside her, what had been recorded, what hunger had required. Instead, he saw the broken seal first.
She tried to fasten the pearl button at her left glove, but her fingers would not close it. After the second attempt, she removed the glove entirely, folded it once, and held it in her other hand.
Ashby, take the remaining 22 sacks into Greyhaven custody at once. No further sack is to be opened without my order. Lady Sophronia's voice softened with triumph.
A necessary correction, Your Grace. Lucilla looked at Swithin. Protection is not the same as agreement, is it? He understood the question. No. Sir Rufus stepped toward her.
You will return to Lynden immediately. You will remain in your rooms until you apologize to me, Lady Sophronia, and His Grace.
You will withdraw every accusation you have made. No. The word felt clean. You are my daughter. That does not make my conscience your property. You will come with me. He reached for her arm.
Swithin moved between them before Sir Rufus could touch her. "She will not be compelled into your carriage." Sir Rufus stared at him.
You have just condemned what she did. I disagreed with her action. I will not assist you in depriving her of choice. Lucilla met Swithin's eyes. The distinction mattered. It was not enough.
"I will go with Mrs. Norbury," she said. Sir Rufus's face went cold.
"If you leave Lynden against my instruction, do not expect to return as though nothing has happened." Pain moved through her, deep and private.
Lynden had been the place where she had spent years making every shortage appear manageable. She had mistaken usefulness for belonging. Something has happened, she said.
That is why I am leaving. Outside, Mrs. Norbury's carriage waited in the autumn light. Lucilla climbed in without looking back at her father.
Swithin followed as far as the step, but did not touch the door. Miss Bellrose, she looked at him. You may preserve grain as evidence, Your Grace.
You cannot preserve yesterday's hunger until it becomes convenient to examine. The carriage moved before he answered. An hour later, Mr.
Fenner placed the release record, the sealed grain sample from R209, and the untouched count of R219 through R240 before Swithin.
Every number was exact. Every witness had signed. Lucilla had protected the evidence more carefully than he had protected the people it was meant to serve.
On the morning of the 25th of October, Swithin arrived at Mrs.
Norbury's house at the proper hour for a call, and brought no flowers, no gift, and no message designed to soften what he had done.
Fenner accompanied him with the Lynden release record, the sealed grain sample from R209, and copies of the witness statements. Mrs. Norbury received them in the drawing room, where
Lucilla sat near the window in a dark morning gown that had not come from Lynden's fashionable rooms, but from the small trunk she had packed for ordinary visits.
Her left glove lay folded on the table beside her. Swithin noticed it immediately. He also noticed that she did not rise until Mrs.
Norbury had formally announced him, as though even courtesy would now occur on terms she had chosen rather than through habit. He bowed. Lucilla curtsied. Nothing in the room suggested intimacy.
That made the truth between them feel more exposed. I have examined every record, he said.
Then you know the sacks were full. Yes. You know the numbers were preserved. Yes. And the sample? Mr. Fenner placed the sealed packet where she could see it without touching it.
Still intact, he said. R209. The seal bears the rector's mark, Mr. Cray's initials, Mr. Cale's initials, Mrs. Norbury's initials, and yours. Lucilla looked at Swithin.
What do you wish to say? He had rehearsed no speech because anything polished would have sounded like another system arranged to protect him. I saw the broken seal and stopped looking, he said.
I treated order as though it were a moral virtue instead of a tool. I judged you before I examined the care you had taken.
By doing so publicly, I gave authority to people who were already prepared to shame you. I was wrong. Mrs. Norbury remained near the tea table but did not intervene. Mr.
Fenner looked down at his papers. Lucilla's face did not soften. You protected me from being forced into my father's carriage. Yes, and you protected his accusation from being contradicted until so...
Later. Yes. You understood that contradiction before you came here. I understood it yesterday afternoon. Yet you waited until this morning. I needed the remaining sacks counted under
Greyhaven custody before changing the order. That was necessary. Waiting to apologize until the count was complete was not. The distinction seemed to surprise her. She looked toward the cold garden beyond the window, where damp leaves lay pressed against the gravel path. Would you have changed your mind if I had returned to Lynden? She asked.
Yes. Would you have changed it if I had remained grateful to you? Swithin did not answer at once. The honest reply was less flattering than the one he wished he could give. I hope so, he said.
But I cannot claim certainty. Lucilla turned back to him. Why not? Because your leaving forced me to see that I had mistaken your restraint for consent. I believed I was protecting evidence and assumed you would remain near enough for me to repair the injury afterward. That was arrogance. Her eyes held his.
You could have said you were certain. You would have known I was lying. Yes. Then I would have added another wrong to the first. Silence followed.
It did not grant forgiveness, but it no longer felt closed. Swithin motioned to Mr. Fenner. The solicitor opened a second paper.
The 22 unopened sacks were counted at Lynden yesterday evening, Swithin said. R219 through R240. Their seams, marks, and cords were recorded.
R219 and R220 will remain sealed as comparison sacks. Lucilla's gaze sharpened.
And the other 20, R221 through R240, will be released to Mr. Cale today. She searched his face for hesitation. All 20, without.
Waiting for the black measure to be opened?
The 2 retained sacks, the dispatched the opened grain sample, the remaining outer sacks from the first allotments, and the witness statements.
Preserve the comparison. Keeping 20 additional households hungry would preserve nothing necessary. The words were simple. That was why they mattered.
He had not come only to admit that her method had been careful. He had changed the decision that had harmed people. Who will control distribution? Lucilla asked. Mr.
Cale will measure against the borrowed market standard. Mr. Ashby will record quantities. Mrs. Norbury may hold the private names if she agrees.
No recipient will be required to appear at Lynden. Mrs. Norbury inclined her head. I agree. And no Greyhaven crest? Lucilla asked. None. A faint movement touched his mouth.
The banner has been abandoned. She almost smiled. The expression did not fully appear, but warmth passed through the room for the first time. Swithin did not mistake it for absolution.
There is another matter, he said. Your father has told 2 subscribers that you altered my judgment through personal influence. Lucilla's composure tightened.
And what did you tell them? That your influence altered my judgment because it was sound. She looked at him in surprise.
That will not stop the gossip. No, it may worsen it, possibly. You do not sound troubled. I am troubled by falsehood.
I am not troubled by the fact that listening to you changed my decision. The words moved closer to confession than either of them was prepared to allow.
Swithin let them rest without asking her to answer. Lucilla looked down at the folded glove. You understand that I cannot return to Lynden simply because you have corrected the grain order. Yes.
And that I do not yet know whether my father will restore my allowance. Yes. You are not going to offer me money? Not today. One brow lifted. That sounds carefully phrased. It is.
I would offer assistance if you lacked safety or shelter. Mrs. Norbury has provided both.
Offering money now would place you under another man's power at the exact moment you are trying to stand outside your father's. Lucilla's fingers relaxed beside the glove.
You have thought about this. I have been thinking about little else. The admission came more quietly than he intended. Mrs. Norbury poured tea with deliberate attention to the cups. Mr.
Fenner found the edge of one paper suddenly worthy of study. Lucilla held Swithin's gaze, and something changed between them. Not trust restored. Not yet.
It was the recognition that he had noticed the form of help she could accept and the form that would become another restraint. Mr. Fenner cleared his throat.
There is a message from Matthew Rook. He removed a folded note from his case.
It arrived at Greyhaven Park shortly after dawn. Swithin had not opened it before Lucilla because the message named her as one of the people Matthew trusted to hear it. Mr.
Fenner broke the outer seal and read aloud.
Matthew would state where he had taken the 3rd wagon if Swithin guaranteed that the laborers who unloaded it would not lose work or cottages merely for obeying what appeared to be a lawful order.
Lucilla looked at Swithin. Can you promise that? Before hearing what he says, yes. Even if the place belongs to Caverton. Especially then.
Fear cannot be allowed to decide whose evidence survives. Mr. Fenner turned the paper over. A second line had been added in a different hand.
Matthew had written the destination after receiving verbal assurance through a Greyhaven messenger, but asked that the promise be repeated before his formal statement.
The words were plain. Caverton Malt House, East Store. Mrs. Norbury set down the teapot. Lucilla's face lost color, though her voice remained steady.
Lady Sophronia knew the exact number. Yes, Swithin said.
Matthew's cottage stands on Caverton land. Yes, and now the missing wagon leads to a Caverton store. Yes. Lucilla looked toward Mr. Fenner.
Do we know whether the sacks remain there? No, he said. Not yet. Swithin rose. The release order for R221 through R240 has already gone to Lynden.
Mr. Cale will have them before noon. I will meet Matthew tomorrow after his household's protection is arranged. Lucilla stood as well. You made the grain decision before coming here. Yes. Then...
Why come? Because correction made at a distance would repair the bread, not the injury. For the first time since he entered, her expression softened without resistance. It lasted only a moment, but he saw it. I have not forgiven you, she said.
I know. Do not behave as though honesty has earned you more than honesty. I will try not to. Try? I am learning that certainty is where most of my errors begin. This time her smile appeared.
Small, unwilling, and real. Before sunset, Mr. Cale sent a signed receipt to Mrs. Norbury's house. 20 numbered sacks had reached Mereford Bakehouse. The ovens would begin before dawn. Beneath the receipt, Mr. Fenner placed Matthew Rookie's destination note. Bread had been secured for the parish. The missing grain had not.
It waited somewhere beyond the East Road, under a Caverton roof. On the morning of the 28th of October, Matthew Rook entered Mrs.
Norbury's drawing room through the side passage, so that no Caverton servant waiting in the road could see him arrive, Mr.
Fenner had arranged the meeting, and Swithin had already signed a written undertaking before Matthew crossed the threshold.
The man's wife and widowed sister would be moved that afternoon to an empty cottage on Greyhaven land. Their rent would not depend upon his statement.
Any malthouse laborer who had unloaded the wagon under apparently lawful instruction would be protected from dismissal by Greyhaven influence wherever that influence could reach.
Swithin placed the signed paper on the table. Read it before you speak. Matthew looked toward Lucilla. I'm not much of a reader, miss. Mr. Fenner will read every word, she said.
And he will stop wherever you wish. Mr. Fenner did so without haste. Matthew listened with both hands resting on his knees, his cap folded between them.
When the reading ended, he asked whether the promise held even if the sacks were no longer at the malt house. It does, Swithin said. Your protection isn't payment for useful evidence.
It is protection from retaliation for telling the truth. Matthew looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. On the 10th, Sir Rufus told me to take the 3rd wagon through the east gate.
He said the load was wanted at Caverton Malt House, and that the underagent there expected it. Mr. Fenner's pen moved across the page.
Did Sir Rufus name the number of sacks? 20. Did you see the serial marks? Some of them. The first I noticed was R241. The rest followed in order, as far as I could tell. Did you open any sack? No. Did you know why the grain was being sent there?
I thought it had been sold or exchanged between estates. What happened when you arrived? Matthew swallowed. 2 laborers opened the east store.
The underagent counted the sacks and said, "That makes 20 for the Bellrose account." I left the wagon there. Lucilla felt the words settle heavily. Not Lynden relief. Not Greyhaven relief.
Bellrose account. Her father's name had followed the grain east, even if his crest had not. Did anyone speak to you afterward? She asked.
3 days later, Lady Sophronia's footman came to the cottage. He didn't threaten me outright.
He only said Caverton had always been generous about the roof over my family and hoped I would remember generosity properly. You understood what he meant, Swithin said.
Yes. Matthew looked down at his cap. I understood too well. Mr. Fenner read the entire statement back. Matthew corrected one detail concerning the hour, then signed with a careful mark.
Swithin did not ask him to remain for further questions. He sent Mr. Ashby with him to oversee the household's move before any notice of the testimony could reach Caverton.
When the door closed, Lucilla looked at the signed page. He does not know the motive. No, Mr. Fenner said.
Only the route, the destination, and the Bellrose account. Swithin's expression remained still.
Which is enough to justify a lawful inspection if the Caverton land agent consents. Will he? Lucilla asked.
He may, if he believes refusal will implicate him in something he assumed was proper. By afternoon, another visitor reached Mrs. Norbury's house, before Mr. Fenner's request could be sent.
Lady Sophronia arrived with her companion, and no prior notice. She entered the drawing-room in pale blue, composed enough to suggest she had rehearsed every expression during the drive.
Swithin and Mr. Fenner had left for Greyhaven Park. Mrs. Norbury remained beside the window, close enough to make privacy impossible.
Miss Bellrose, Lady Sophronia said, this unpleasantness has gone too far. Lucilla did not offer her tea.
Has the hunger gone too far, or only the inquiry? You see insult where I am offering rescue. Lady Sophronia took a folded paper from her reticule, but did not yet release it.
Sir Rufus is prepared to restore your allowance. You may return to Lynden without formal apology. I will tell the county that your conduct arose from excessive concern for the poor, which, though
misguided, is not dishonorable, and the missing grain, a confusion in transport. 20 numbered sacks were taken to Caverton Malt House. The smallest change crossed Lady Sophronia's face.
You cannot prove they remain there. That is not a denial. It is realism. Grain moves. Accounts are adjusted.
Estates exchange goods. Greyhaven did not authorize an exchange, then let the gentleman settle it privately. Lucilla looked at the paper in her hand.
What must I say? Only that you have no reason to believe anyone intended dishonesty.
You will withdraw the suggestion that Sir Rufus knowingly deprived the parish. And the false measure? An old household vessel, no more. And Matthew Rook? Lady Sophronia's eyes cooled.
A carter with reason to improve his circumstances. Lucilla understood then that the offer had not been brought to save her. It had been brought because Matthew had spoken. You know he has given a
statement. I know frightened men become inventive when a duke promises them security. His household was protected before the statement was heard. That distinction will not matter to society.
It matters to the truth. Lady Sophronia leaned slightly forward. Truth is a luxury for women who can afford consequences. Lucilla thought of Mrs. Baines dividing 3 small loaves of Mrs.
Pell watching grain fail to reach the rim, and of her own father sealing a granary while people waited for bread.
Silence has been the luxury of people who were never required to go hungry. Lady Sophronia's composure thinned.
You will lose Lynden. If keeping it requires this, I never possessed it. The paper disappeared back into her reticule. Do not imagine Greyhaven will make you respectable.
A duke may defend a woman's cause and still decline to make her welcome in his life. The cruelty was precise, because it touched a fear Lucilla had not named. She did not allow it to alter her voice.
Then I will know my life is mine before he enters it. Lady Sophronia left without another word. Sir Rufus's letter arrived the following morning. He ended Lucilla's allowance from the 1st of
November, forbade her return to Lynden, and stated that any restoration of her position required a written retraction, an apology to Lady Sophronia, and an acknowledgement that the Duke's attention
had unsettled her judgment. Lucilla read the letter twice at Mrs. Norbury's writing desk. Then she took out the small account book she had carried from Lynden and calculated her private funds.
Lodging cost her nothing under her godmother's roof. But gowns, correspondence, travel, and the ordinary necessities of independence did not disappear because affection provided shelter.
She counted the weeks once, then again. The second number was no kinder. Her pencil stopped above the page.
For the first time she understood how completely her father had arranged virtue around dependence. Mrs. Norbury did not tell her not to worry.
She placed a second candle near the account book and said, "You may plan without pretending you are alone." Swithin came later that day after receiving a copy of Sir Rufus's letter.
He read Lucilla's figures without taking the book from her. I can place funds at your disposal, he said.
No, you haven't heard the terms. There can be no terms that make it wise. Alone, then. Society already says I altered your judgment through personal influence.
I will not give Lady Sophronia a financial fact to place beneath the lie. His jaw tightened.
You should not have to choose hardship to protect your name. I am choosing independence while I still understand its cost. And if the cost becomes unsafe, then I will tell Mrs.
Norbury first. The answer excluded him deliberately. He accepted it. Very well. 2 days later, a small cart arrived from Lynden with Lucilla's acknowledged personal possessions. Mr.
Cray had packed them under inventory. Clothing, her mother's prayer book, 2 miniatures, a workbox, several letters, and the horn-handled bread knife with the small nick near its tip.
Lucilla lifted it from its wrapping, and remembered her mother cutting the smallest slice for herself before passing the loaf around the table. She had once mistaken that habit for gentleness. Now she wondered how many women had been praised for making their own deprivation invisible. Beneath the inventory lay a brief unsigned note in Mr.
Cray's hand. Everything that was yours by memory, if not by account. That evening Mr. Fenner brought the reply from Mr. Seaton, the Caverton land agent.
He consented to an inspection of the East Store if Greyhaven produced the dispatch numbers and Matthew's statement.
Because Lady Sophronia's name had been connected to the entry, he had sent formal notice to Caverton Grange. The inspection was set for the 2nd of November. Swithin folded the letter.
She knows we are coming. Lucilla set her mother's knife beside the account book. Then we must hope she believes the sacks are safer hidden than moved.
On the morning of the 2nd of November, Lucilla saw the 20 missing sacks before she saw Lady Sophronia, and the sight of them wounded her more deeply than any accusation had done.
They stood in 2 ordered rows behind ordinary barley stores inside Caverton Malt House, their Greyhaven wheat marks turned toward the wall and their serial numbers facing one another in the dark.
R241 through R260.
Every cord was intact, every seam remained closed.
Not one sack had been opened to feed a household, milled for bread, or lost through carelessness. The grain had waited untouched while Mrs.
Baines divided 3 small loaves and blamed herself for making too little. Lucilla stood just inside the East store with Mrs. Norbury beside her. Swithin, Mr. Fenner, Matthew Rook, Mr.
Seaton and 2 malthouse laborers completed the party. The air smelled of damp timber, barley dust, and the bitter remnants of kiln smoke. No one spoke until Mr.
Fenner had read each serial number aloud, and Mr. Seaton had confirmed it against the copied Greyhaven dispatch sequence. All 20, Mr. Fenner said.
Those are the sacks I brought. One of the laborers, a stooped man with flour-colored dust on his sleeves, nodded. We unloaded them, sir.
The underagent said it was an estate transfer. Were you told the grain belonged to Greyhaven Relief? Swithin asked. No, Your Grace.
We were told it was for the Bellrose account. Swithin looked at Mr. Seaton. The land agent's face had tightened since the first serial mark came into view. Where is the inventory, Mr.
Seaton asked the second laborer to bring the malthouse book from the office. While they waited, Lucilla moved closer to the sacks without touching them. She had expected anger.
What came instead was grief stripped of softness. Her father had not taken grain because Lynden itself had been starving. He had not used it to meet some emergency that might complicate judgment.
He had placed 20 full sacks behind another family's barley and allowed a false measure to make the remaining 40 appear sufficient.
He had known exactly what happened when an allotment was short. He had watched Lucilla spend years cutting household portions smaller and had turned that skill into concealment.
You understand now, Swithin said quietly. He had remained a step away, close enough to be present and far enough not to claim the moment. Yes, her voice was steady.
The false measure was not merely theft from each household. It was how 40 sacks could be entered as though they served the work of 60. Yes, my father did not hope no one would count.
He hoped the poor would accept less and blame themselves. Swithin's expression changed, but he did not offer comfort too quickly.
That is what the evidence suggests. Lucilla appreciated the restraint. She needed truth more than reassurance. The laborer returned carrying a thick inventory book and a narrow packet of papers.
Mr. Seaton placed the book on a wooden table beneath the window. He turned to the entry for the 10th of October and read in silence before speaking aloud. 20 wheat sacks. Bellrose account.
Credit against R.B. Mrs. Norbury's hand tightened around the handle of her reticule. Matthew stared at the floor. Lucilla looked at the initials. R.B.
Her father's name reduced to a notation small enough to fit between 2 ordinary entries. Mr. Fenner asked, who made this entry? My clerk, from the receiving underagent's report, on whose authority Mr. Seaton turned another page, then opened the narrow packet.
There is a memorandum. He read it once, and the color left his face. I believed it concerned a lawful transfer between Sir Rufus and Caverton interests. What does it say? Swithin asked. Mr.
Seaton hesitated. It records the value of 20 wheat sacks as credit against a private obligation owed by Sir Rufus Bellrose through Caverton arrangements. Does it identify Greyhaven as seller?
No. Does it contain my authorization? No. Does it record payment to Mereford Relief? No. Swithin's voice remained quiet. Then what lawful transfer did you believe had occurred, Mr.?
Seaton closed his eyes briefly.
I believed Sir Rufus owned the grain. Lucilla said, because it stood at Lynden. Yes, miss. And because Lady Sophronia's name supported the account? His silence answered before he did.
Her steward transmitted the instruction. Mr. Fenner held out one hand. I will need the memorandum. Mr. Seaton drew back slightly.
The inventory remains Caverton property. It will remain with you, Mr. Fenner said. The memorandum may transfer under written receipt.
You will receive a full description, date, and acknowledgement of custody. Mr. Seaton looked toward Swithin. Is that required? It is the least intrusive method available.
I am not removing your book or sealing your office. I am asking for the document that records credit against property Sir Rufus did not own. Mr. Seaton considered, then nodded.
Under receipt, Mr. Fenner agreed. The outer malthouse door opened before the paper could be prepared. Lady Sophronia entered with her companion and a footman.
She had traveled quickly enough that a strand of hair had loosened near one temple, though her expression remained composed. Mr.
Seaton, she said, you had no authority to open a Caverton store to outsiders without awaiting my father's direction. I sent formal notice to Caverton Grange, he replied.
Property named in his Grace's dispatch record was present. Refusal would have been improper. Her gaze moved past him to the 20 sacks. The pause was slight. Lucilla saw it. Swithin saw it.
Mr. Fenner stopped writing. There has been a misunderstanding, Lady Sophronia said. The grain was accepted as collateral. Collateral for whose debt? Swithin asked. Sir Rufus's account. Then.
Sir Rufus pledged property he did not own. He represented that the grain stood under Lynden authority. Did you ask for a bill of sale? The arrangement was private. Did you ask for Greyhaven's?
Consent? It was not presented as necessary. Swithin looked toward the sacks. 20 numbered sacks bearing my estate mark were hidden behind barley stores, and consent did not seem necessary?
They were not hidden. Their marks faced the wall. That may have been the laborer's convenience. One of the men spoke before fear could stop him.
You were told to place them so the Greyhaven mark wouldn't show from the passage, my lady. Mr. Seaton turned toward him. Who told you that? The under-agent. Lady Sophronia's composure thinned.
A laborer's recollection cannot define the intent of an estate transaction. No, Lucilla said.
The inventory, the debt memorandum, the serial numbers, and your knowledge of the missing 20 do that far better. Lady Sophronia looked at her with open coldness.
You have already destroyed your position in one household. Do not imagine the county will forgive you for destroying your father. The old fear rose, exact and familiar.
It carried Lynden's corridors, her father's controlled voice, and every year in which belonging had depended upon making wrong look manageable. Lucilla let the fear exist without obeying it.
My father's act existed before I named it. You could still choose discretion. You mean silence. I mean proportion. The grain can be returned. The credit can be reversed.
No family need be ruined for a mistake. Lucilla looked at the sacks. Mrs. Baines was told her hunger was ingratitude.
I was called reckless before the county for opening grain that should never have been short. A private correction would restore property and leave the lie untouched. Swithin's gaze settled on her.
There are two possible courses, he said. Mr. Fenner can pursue private restitution through the estates and creditors.
Or the full account can be made before the parish subscribers and recipients. Lady Sophronia turned toward him.
You would allow Miss Bellrose to decide the form? The accusation against her was public. The short measure was used against people whose names were kept private only to preserve their dignity.
She has more standing in this choice than anyone here. Lucilla understood the temptation of a private settlement. It might soften gossip. It might preserve some fragment of her relationship with Sir Rufus. It might allow Lady Sophronia to call everything confusion and continue dispensing charity as social discipline.
Public, Lucilla said. Not a court, not a spectacle, an account. Swithin nodded once. Where? Mereford Tithe Barn. The same parish that received the grain. Lady Sophronia's voice hardened.
You will regret this. Lucilla met her eyes. Perhaps. Regret is not proof that silence was right. Mr. Seaton closed the east door under joint witness.
A new cord was drawn through the latch and sealed with both Caverton office wax and Mr. Fenner's traveling seal. The two laborers signed that no sack had been moved or opened during inspection. Mr.
Fenner gave Mr. Seaton a written receipt for the debt memorandum. The inventory book remained in Mr. Seaton's hands.
Nothing left the malt house except the single paper transferred by consent, and the knowledge no one could now put back behind the barley. Outside, the November air was cold and clear.
Swithin walked beside Lucilla while Mrs. Norbury followed with Mr. Fenner. Private restitution would have been easier, he said. For whom? Not for Mrs.
Baines. No. He looked toward the east door. Then public it shall be. On the 5th of November, Sir Rufus came to Mrs.
Norbury's house without sending word ahead, as though sudden arrival might restore the authority he had lost everywhere else. Lucilla heard his carriage before the servant announced him.
By the time he entered the drawing-room, she had already placed her mother's horn-handled bread knife inside its narrow leather case and closed the lid. Mrs. Norbury remained beside the fire.
She did not offer to leave. Sir Rufus looked from her to Lucilla with visible displeasure. I wish to speak to my daughter privately. You may speak to her here, Mrs. Norbury said.
This is not your house. That is precisely the problem. Lucilla stood. What do you want? His mouth tightened at the directness.
I have come to end this before it becomes irreparable. The grain was diverted on the 10th of October. The measure had been altered before Mrs. Baines complained. Which part do you believe is not?
Yet irreparable? You know nothing of financial arrangements between estates. I know 20 sacks bearing Greyhaven numbers stood behind Caverton barley under credit against your debt. The words
struck him. For the first time, Lucilla saw that he had not expected her to know the full memorandum. Lady Sophronia acted beyond what I authorized, he said. Mr.
Seaton's inventory says Bellrose account. An account is not intent. Then tell me your intent. Sir Rufus moved farther into the room.
I intended to preserve Lynden from embarrassment while the debt was settled. The grain was to remain intact. No one meant to deprive the parish permanently, only long enough for the value to serve.
You, the relief continued, through a false measure, an old vessel used by servants, a vessel that made every short allotment look full. His face hardened. You are determined to speak as though motive does not matter. Motive matters. That is why I am asking whether you knew people would receive less. He did not answer.
Silence entered the room with more force than denial. Sir Rufus turned toward the window, mastering his expression before he faced her again. You have made your point. The grain will be returned.
The credit will be reversed. I will restore your allowance from the 1st of this month. Lucilla waited. He had never offered generosity without deciding its price first. And Lynden? She asked.
You may come home. Under what condition you will state publicly that you have no reason to believe I intended dishonesty.
You will say the grain was placed at Caverton as temporary security, and that the shortage arose from household mismanagement, not design. Mrs. Norbury's gaze cooled.
You want her to accuse servants of what you arranged. I want this family protected. Lucilla felt the old pull of Lynden. She knew the sound of rain against her bedchamber windows, the bend in the
west stair, the cupboard where her mother's letters had once been kept, and the exact place the morning light fell across the breakfast room. Home had never been an abstract idea.
That was why losing it hurt. And Lady Sophronia, she asked.
Her name need not be mentioned, because she must be protected too, because public scandal serves no one. It served you well when the scandal was mine. Sir Rufus's control slipped. You broke.
Happened. Then hear mine. If you do this, you cease to be my daughter in every meaningful sense. The pain came exactly where he intended it to. Lucilla did not deny it.
She let it reach her without allowing it to choose for her. You made daughterhood conditional long before I understood the terms, she said. You required silence, usefulness, and gratitude.
The moment I refused one of them, you withdrew the rest. You speak in the Duke's language now. No, I speak in mine.
You simply preferred it when I had no place to use it. Sir Rufus looked toward Mrs. Norbury, perhaps expecting age or propriety to intervene. She gave him neither. When you are tired of being made...
A cause, he said to Lucilla. You will discover that Greyhaven's attention is not a home. Then I will still have chosen truth without asking him to become one. Sir Rufus left without bowing.
The front door closed. His carriage wheels struck the gravel and receded toward the road. Lucilla remained standing until the sound disappeared.
Then she crossed to the small table and reopened the leather case. The horn-handled knife lay in its fitted groove, the nick near its tip catching the firelight.
She tried to set it more precisely, though it was already straight. Her hand shifted. The blade touched the edge of the case instead of the groove. She tried again and missed a second time. Mrs.
Norbury did not say her name. She waited until Lucilla lowered her hand. I thought I had prepared myself, Lucilla said.
Preparation is not the same as not being wounded. He knew what word would hurt most. Yes. Lucilla closed the case without fastening it and reached toward her godmother, Mrs.
Norbury took her hand. No reassurance was offered, none was needed. By the 7th, notices for the Mereford accounting had gone to subscribers, clergy, recipients who wished to attend Mr.
Seaton, Matthew Rook, Lady Sophronia, and Sir Rufus. Swithin came to Mrs. Norbury's house with Mr. Fenner and the final arrangement. I would prefer Sir Rufus not attend, he said.
Lucilla looked up from the witness list. Why? Because he will use every social advantage he possesses to turn the room against you. He will do that whether he is inside or outside. He
cannot interrupt.
Outside, he can claim you condemned him in his absence. Swithin's expression tightened.
I am trying to spare you another public attack. I know. You say that as though it changes nothing. It changes how I hear you.
It does not change what must happen. He stood near the writing table, one hand resting lightly against the chair back. Then tell me what you require. He attends. Lady Sophronia attends.
They do not sit together. Matthew does not enter through the same door or stand where either of them can watch him throughout. Agreed. The account begins with me, Mr.
Fenner paused over his notes. With the broken seal, with all of it, I cut the Bellrose cord. I broke the wax. I opened R209 through R218.
I took a grain sample from R209. I called witnesses. I left 22 sacks untouched.
Lady Sophronia will use that act if I conceal it, so I will state it before she does. Swithin's gaze held hers.
You would place your unauthorized act before the evidence against them. Truth cannot begin only where it favors me. Something in his face softened, though his voice remained controlled.
Then it will begin with you. The remaining arrangements required only 3 safeguards. The blackened measure would stay in Mr.
Fenner's locked traveling chest until it stood beside the borrowed market standard half-bushel under public witness. The original Greyhaven dispatch book would remain with Mr. Ashby.
The Caverton inventory would remain with Mr. Seaton. Copies could be read, but no original would change hands without receipt. Swithin asked whether Lucilla wanted him beside her during her account.
Not in front of me, she said.
No, and not so far away that my father mistakes distance for doubt. Where, then? Beside the truth, whether or not it leads toward me. Swithin answered without hesitation.
That is where I will stand. On the morning of the 9th of November, the doors of Merriford Tithe Barn opened beneath a pale winter sky. Recipients entered by the south side.
Subscribers and local gentry entered through the main doors. Matthew came with Mr. Ashby and remained near the wall opposite Sir Rufus. Lady Sophronia took a separate bench. Mr.
Seaton stood beside the Caverton inventory. Mr. Cale brought the borrowed market standard half-bushel under written custody. Mr. Fenner carried the locked chest containing the blackened measure.
At the center of the swept floor stood 2 trestle tables, and enough empty space for every lie to be measured. Sir Rufus had arrived before Lucilla.
He looked at her as though Lynden still stood behind him, like an order she must obey. Lucilla removed her gloves, folded them once, and walked toward the center.
Lucilla crossed the swept floor of Merriford Tithe Barn beneath the weight of every eye, and stopped beside the 2 trestle tables without looking toward Swithin for permission.
The blackened measure remained inside Mr. Fenner's locked chest. The borrowed market standard half-bushel stood beneath Mr. Cale's hand. Along the rear wall, the recovered sacks
R241 through R260 rested under joint seal beside R219 and R220, the 2 unopened comparison sacks retained from Lynden.
Swithin stepped forward only far enough for his voice to carry. This gathering is not a court, he said. I claim no judicial authority here.
It is an account of property supplied under my name, relief promised to Merriford households, and measures used in that distribution.
Those who gave, received, carried, recorded, or handled the grain have been invited to speak.
No recipient is here to defend the fact that hunger brought them to the door. Silence settled beneath the rafters. Swithin turned toward Lucilla.
Miss Bellrose will begin. Sir Rufus shifted sharply on his bench. Lady Sophronia remained still, but the fingers of one glove pressed into the other. Lucilla faced the room.
On the 24th of October, I cut the cord across Lynden Granary and broke my father's wax seal. I used a duplicate key held by Mr. Cray.
I opened sacks R209 through R218 without Sir Rufus's consent and without his grace's order. A low murmur moved among the subscribers.
Lucilla continued before anyone could shape the admission for her. The rector, Mr. Cray, Mr. Cale, and Mrs. Norbury witnessed the opening. Each sack was full. Each serial number was entered.
A grain sample was sealed from R209. R219 through R240 remained unopened. I sent 10 sacks to the bakehouse because Mr.
Cale had no flour for morning bread, and Mrs. Baines had eaten nothing since the previous afternoon. Lady Sophronia rose slightly.
Then Miss Bellrose admits reckless interference before any accusation against others has been proved.
I admit exactly what I did, Lucilla said.
Truth does not become safer because one begins where it is flattering. Swithin's gaze remained on her, steady and restrained. Sir Rufus stood. She broke a lawful seal.
That fact alone discredits every act that followed. Sit down, Swithin said. His tone was quiet. Sir Rufus did not obey at once.
Then he saw that no one else had moved with him, and lowered himself back to the bench. Mr. Fenner brought the locked chest to the centre. He showed the unbroken outer seals to Mr. Seaton.
Ashby, the rector, and 2 county subscribers before cutting the cord. The blackened half-bushel emerged wrapped and labeled exactly as it had been at Lynden. Mr.
Cale filled the borrowed market standard half-bushel with grain from R219, struck it level with a straight board, and poured the contents into a clean bin.
He then filled the blackened measure from the same grain and struck it level in the same manner. When he poured that amount back into the standard, the grain failed to reach the rim. Mr.
Cayley added the missing quantity from the bin. The difference filled the same shallow bowl used during the household comparisons. Approximately 1/6 short, he said.
The same shortage found in the recipient allotments. Lady Sophronia lifted her chin. Old household vessels vary. The Mereford market keeper stepped forward.
Not lawfully when a half-bushel is promised. Mr. Fenner turned the blackened measure upside down. He loosened the retaining pegs beneath the base and drew out a fitted wooden disc.
The disc had raised the interior floor while leaving the outer dimensions unchanged. A collective breath passed through the barn. Mrs. Baines closed her eyes.
Sir Rufus said, I have never examined the inside of that vessel. Lucilla looked at him. You ordered its use. My steward did. Under your authority. Servants alter things, mister.
Cray spoke from the witness bench. The measure has been kept in Lynden Granary for years, sir. Mr. Voss used it by your direction for relief allotments. Sir Rufus's face hardened.
You remain a servant in my house. Yes, sir, Mr. Cray said. That is why I remember whose orders were given there. Swithin raised one hand, and the room settled, Mr.
Ashby opened the Greyhaven dispatch book. 60 full wheat sacks left Greyhaven Park on the 10th of October, he said. R201 through R260. 3 wagons.
20 sacks on each. Mr. Fenner read the Lynden count. R201 through R208 had been opened for the first allotments.
R209 through R240 had been accounted for at Lynden. R241 through R260 were absent. Mr.
Cale then read the household records. The recipients entered, as having received half a bushel, had repeatedly brought him quantities equal to roughly 5/6 of the market standard.
No full dispatch sack had produced too little. The theft had occurred when portions were measured. Lucilla watched understanding move through the room.
The false measure had not created scarcity from nowhere. It had made reduced allotments look complete. Matthew Rook stepped forward next. His cap was not in his hands today.
Sir Rufus told me to take the 3rd wagon through Lynden's East Gate, he said. I carried all 20 sacks to Caverton Malt House.
The under-agent counted them and said they were for the Bellrose account. Sir Rufus pointed toward him. You live on Greyhaven land now. Because my old roof depended on silence, Matthew replied. His Grace arranged another before hearing what I had to say. Mr. Seaton opened the Caverton inventory. The entry reads 20 wheat sacks. Bellrose account.
Credit against R.B. I believed Sir Rufus owned the grain. I was wrong. Mr. Fenner produced the genuine debt memorandum received under written receipt.
It recorded the value of 20 wheat sacks as credit against Sir Rufus's private obligation through Caverton arrangements. No bill of sale from Greyhaven appeared.
No authorization from Swithin appeared. No payment to Mereford Relief appeared. Sir Rufus's face had gone grey. Lady Sophronia proposed the credit, he said. Every head turned toward her.
She rose fully now. That is false. You said the grain could stand as collateral until the account was settled. I said no such thing about relief grain. You knew the number 20 before it was.
Public, Lucilla said. Lady Sophronia's composure fractured. Because I knew 20 sacks had been set aside. That does not prove theft.
They were never meant to disappear. The admission hung beneath the rafters. Sir Rufus stared at her. You assured me the arrangement would remain private, and you assured me the remaining grain
would be sufficient. Their words met in the center of the barn, with the false-bottom disc lying between them. Mr. Seaton closed the Caverton inventory.
I will not accept further relief instructions from Lady Sophronia or any Bellrose agent without written proof of title. One of the principal subscribers rose from the front bench.
Sir Rufus's name will be removed from the next county subscription list until restitution is complete. There was no applause. The silence was more final. Mrs. Baines came forward.
She did not speak of debt or inventory. I thought I'd measured badly, she said. I thought hunger had made me ungrateful.
Miss Bellrose was the first person who asked how many loaves the grain actually made. Lucilla felt the words more sharply than praise. Sir Rufus stood again. Lucilla, stop this. She faced him.
No. You are still my daughter. That did not prevent you from using my silence. He looked towards Swithin, perhaps expecting rank to restore the order he had lost.
Swithin stepped beside Lucilla, not before her. There is one further account, he said. At the Mereford subscription meeting, I publicly judged Miss Bellrose for opening the granary.
I knew people lacked bread, yet I treated preservation of order as the higher duty. I was wrong. She preserved the serial record, the unopened comparison sacks, the witnesses, and the grain sample.
More importantly, she preserved the purpose of the relief. My criticism strengthened those already prepared to shame her.
I withdraw it before the same community that heard it. Lady Sophronia said, "You humiliate yourself for her." Swithin did not look at her.
I correct myself because the truth requires it. Lucilla faced the gathered parish. A full measure is not generosity. It is what was promised.
No family should have been required to bow for receiving it. The consequences followed from the evidence rather than from ducal anger. Greyhaven relief was removed from Sir Rufus's control.
The recovered sacks would pass to Mereford after the written comparison was completed. Creditors would receive notice that the Bellrose debt arrangement rested upon property Sir Rufus did not own.
The Earl of Caverton would receive copies of the inventory entry and Lady Sophronia's admission. Matthew and the malthouse laborers would retain employment and housing. No arrest was ordered.
No sentence was pronounced. When the barn emptied, each original returned to its proper custodian. Mr. Ashby carried the Greyhaven dispatch book back to Greyhaven Park. Mr.
Seaton retained the Caverton inventory. Mr. Cale returned the borrowed market standard measure to its keeper under receipt. Mr.
Fenner kept the blackened measure, the debt memorandum, the Lynden record, and the sealed grain sample until restitution closed. Lucilla remained beside the cleared tables.
Swithin stood a short distance away. "When this account is settled," he said, "and there is no scandal left for me to solve, may I call upon you?" Lucilla met his gaze. "You may ask Mrs. Norbury."
By the middle of November, the parish had received every recovered sack, but justice continued in quieter rooms where no one applauded.
Sir Rufus signed a civil agreement requiring restitution for the diverted grain after his creditors learned that part of his security had rested upon property he did not own.
Lynden Hall remained his, though the mortgaged accounts and all future relief dealings passed under the supervision of an estate agent acceptable to those creditors. His name disappeared from the county subscription list.
Before the month ended, he left Kent for Bath, writing Lucilla once to say that distance might restore the reason public excitement had taken from her.
She answered that reconciliation could not begin by calling truth excitement.
The Earl of Caverton repaid the sum attached to the improper credit and removed Lady Sophronia from every charitable office conducted in the family name.
She returned to Caverton Grange, where influence could no longer be built from public gratitude. Matthew Rook's household moved into a sound cottage on Greyhaven land.
The malthouse laborers kept their work. At Mereford, the parish purchased a new certified half-bushel for Mr. Cale. It was not the borrowed measure used at the tithe barn.
That vessel had gone back to the market keeper under receipt exactly as promised. Lucilla remained with Mrs. Norbury while the restitution proceeded. Swithin did not call until Mrs.
Norbury formally permitted it, and even then he came with no assumption that public gratitude had created private rights.
Their courtship began through morning visits, chaperone drives, parish dinners, and conversations about matters most people considered too practical for romance. He asked about bread contracts.
She questioned tenant rents. He showed her account books without expecting praise for opening them.
She corrected him when his proposed rules protected records more carefully than the people those records described. Sometimes he disliked the correction.
He learned not to mistake that dislike for proof she was wrong. In early December, Mrs. Norbury accompanied Lucilla to Greyhaven Park for a visit to the estate granary.
Frost silvered the yard, and the air inside the long brick buildings smelled of grain, rope, and clean timber. New instructions had been posted beside the weighing table.
Every emergency release required the steward and 2 witnesses before a numbered sack could be opened. Swithin stood near the notice with Mr. Ashby.
It prevents one person from altering the account, he said. Lucilla read it twice.
It also prevents one person from opening grain when 2 others can't be found. That is the cost of preserving trust. Whose trust? The estate's. An estate doesn't eat, Mr.
Ashby shifted his weight. Mrs. Norbury examined a row of scales with unnecessary attention. Swithin's expression cooled. You object to the whole instruction? No.
I object to making the rule absolute. Exceptions make abuse easier. They also make mercy possible. Mercy without record returns us to private judgment. Lucilla turned toward him.
And record without mercy returns us to Lynden's sealed door. The words struck.
Swithin's face became still in the way it had at the subscription meeting, and for one instant Lucilla feared that courtship had only made disagreement more dangerous.
Then he looked back at the notice rather than using rank to end the matter. Design the exception, he said. She had expected defense, not invitation.
When a parish baker certifies there is no flour for the next baking, a steward or rector should be able to open numbered sacks with 1 household witness present.
The numbers must be written before release. A full review follows within 24 hours. Mr. Ashby frowned. 1 household witness may not understand the account. The witness only needs to
understand what number is written on the sack and whether it was full. Swithin asked, and if neither steward nor rector is available? Then the baker and 2 household witnesses.
Hunger should not wait, because every respectable man is at dinner. The faintest movement touched his mouth. You remain suspicious of dinner. It has disappointed me before. He looked at Mr.
Ashby. Rewrite the instruction under Miss Bellrose's wording. The steward hesitated.
Your Grace, a universal rule is easier to enforce. Then enforce a better one. Lucilla watched Swithin sign the amended notice after every condition had been read aloud.
He did not present the change as generosity. He did not say he had yielded for her sake.
He accepted that an ordinary disagreement had revealed a flaw in his power and corrected it before the day ended. On the carriage ride back to Mrs.
Norbury's house, Lucilla understood that his apology at the tithe barn had not been a single noble act arranged for witnesses. He was learning how to be altered in private.
The knowledge did not erase caution. It made trust possible. By the final week of December, the grain restitution had been completed. Mr.
Fenner returned the sealed grain samples to the written file, retained the blackened measure until all claims closed, and confirmed that no parish household had been charged for the replacement bread.
Only then did Swithin ask Mrs. Norbury whether Lucilla would receive him in the morning room with the connecting door left open.
He arrived on the 2nd of January without jewels, flowers, or a prepared speech designed for admiration. Lucilla sat near the fire. Her mother's horn-handled bread knife rested inside its closed leather case on a side table among her personal belongings. Swithin remained standing until she invited him to sit.
Before I ask anything, he said, I need to be plain about what I am asking for. That sounds grave. It is. His control was visible, but not effortless. You will not marry a man who expects
peace to depend upon your silence. No, you will not make his errors look graceful, so his household can remain comfortable. No, you may oppose him before breakfast. Very likely. His mouth
shifted. Then I should tell you that I do not want obedience disguised as harmony.
I want the woman who broke a seal because hunger could not wait, and who later insisted that her own act be judged first. Lucilla looked at him steadily.
And when I am wrong, I will tell you, kindly, when possible, and when you are wrong, you won't need permission. She felt warmth rise behind her eyes and refused to hide it.
That is not the same as promising you will listen. No, he drew one careful breath. I promise I will stop long enough to discover whether listening is required, even when I dislike what I hear. The answer was imperfect. That was why she trusted it.
Swithin stepped closer, but left space between them. Lucilla, I cannot promise that life beside me will never contain loss, anger, or uncertainty.
I can promise that your place will not depend upon making those things invisible.
Will you marry me? She thought of Lynden's small loaf, the false measure, the broken wax, and the day he had changed a rule because she had shown him whom it failed. Love had not arrived as rescue.
It had grown through attention, correction, and the difficult safety of being heard. Yes, she said.
I will. A solicitor instructed separately on Lucilla's behalf explained every marriage article before she signed.
Her mother's prayer book, miniatures, workbox, letters, and horn-handled bread knife remained her personal property. The wedding took place at Merriford Parish Church on the 17th of January.
Mrs. Norbury stood near Lucilla. Mr. Cray attended from Lynden. Mrs. Baines watched from a side pew without lowering her eyes. Sir Rufus did not come.
His absence hurt, but pain no longer proved. Lucilla had chosen wrongly.
On the evening of the 18th, she entered Greyhaven Park's private supper room as Duchess of Greyhaven, and found only 2 places laid. A full warm loaf stood between them.
Beside it lay her mother's horn-handled knife, the small nick near its tip unchanged. Swithin reached toward it, then stopped. "Would you like to cut the bread?" he asked.
Lucilla took the knife that had once divided every portion smaller, so others would believe there was enough. She cut one full slice and placed it on her own plate.
Then she turned the handle toward him.